In the heart of Nigeria, a simple mechanic named Joshua Awolowo heard the voice of God, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each time he turned away, doubting the divine call. But when tragedy struck and he finally answered, what followed was a journey of miracles, betrayal, and unstoppable move of God that would shake the foundation of faith in his community. This is his story. Joshua Awolowo was an ordinary man from Ibadan, a humble mechanic known for his hard work and integrity. He had little interest in church beyond Sunday service. One evening, as he was closing his workshop, he had a soft but commanding voice. "Joshua, I have chosen you to shepherd my people." Startled, he looked around. The street was empty. He dismissed the experience as exhaustion. Days later, as he slept, the voice returned in a dream, calling him again. "Joshua, my hand is upon you. Serve me." He woke up trembling, but told no one. "Why me?" he thought. "I am just a mechanic." The third call came during a Sunday sermon. The preacher pointed directly at Joshua and said, "Someone here has been running from God's call. Stop resisting." This time, Joshua couldn't ignore it. He broke down in tears, but fear held him back. Weeks turned into months, and Joshua's life took a drastic turn. His business began to crumble. His best workers quit, and customers stopped coming. One night, his youngest son fell gravely ill. The doctors were baffled, and medication seemed useless. Desperate, Joshua knelt and prayed like never before. "God, if this is your way of getting my attention, I surrender. Use me." Miraculously, his son recovered overnight. From that moment, Joshua knew he could no longer run. He announced to his family that he would become a pastor. His wife Ruth supported him, though she worried about the challenges ahead. Joshua began fasting and praying. He sought guidance from elder pastors, and soon he started holding small prayers meeting in his workshop. God's power moved mightily. People came with sicknesses and left healed. One blind man regained his sight during prayer. Word spread like wildfire. Crowd flocked to see the mechanic turned preacher. Within months, Joshua's prayer meeting outgrew his workshop. A wealthy benefactor donated land for a church. The new church, House of Restoration, became a beacon of hope. But not everyone celebrated Joshua's success. Some local pastors, envious of his growing influence, began to plot against him. "He is just a mechanic," they whispered. "Who does he think he is?" They accused him of using dark powers and warned people to stay away. But the miracle continued. A barren woman conceived after 10 years of trying. A paralyzed man walked again. Joshua refused to retaliate against his critics. "The battle is the Lord's," he told the congregation. The envy grew. One night, unknown men vandalized the church, destroying equipment and setting chairs on fire. Joshua and his congregation prayed for protection. Despite the attack, they held a service the next morning under the open sky. During that service, something extraordinary happened. A rainstorm threatened to disrupt the gathering, but as Joshua prayed, the storm cloud parted, leaving the church grounds dry while rain poured all around. News of the miracle silenced many critics, but a few pastors doubled down on their efforts to discredit him. They accused him publicly, saying, "If his power is from God, let him prove it." Joshua remained calm. "God will vindicate me in his time," he said. Months later, during a large crusade, a renowned pastor who had been one of Joshua's harshest critics attended secretly. As Joshua preached, the pastor suddenly collapsed. Joshua rushed to his side and prayed. The man was revived instantly and confessed to the crowd, "This man is truly called by God. I tried to destroy him, but God has shown me my folly." The confession stunned the community. Many of Joshua's critics repented and joined his ministry. The church grew spontaneously. Joshua's humility and dedication inspired others to pursue God wholeheartedly. Years later, Joshua reflected on his journey. "God doesn't call the qualified," he said. He qualified the called. Today, House of Restoration is one of the large churches in Nigeria, a testament to the power of obedience and faith. This is the miraculous story of a man who ran from his calling but found purpose when he surrendered to God. Remember, when God calls you, no one can stop his plan for your life. As the years passed, Joshua Awolowo's ministry became a movement. He wasn't just leading a church, he was transforming lives across Nigeria and beyond. But the success didn't come without challenges. The same God who called him also tested him, shaping him for an even greater purpose. One fateful morning, during a routine prayer session, Joshua felt a sudden heaviness in his spirit. He knew something was about to happen. By the afternoon, news broke down. One of his closest associates had stolen church funds and fled. The betrayal cut deep. Joshua called the congregation together and asked them to pray for the man instead of condemning him. "We all fall short," he said. "Let's show him the grace God has shown us." Months later, the man returned, confessing his sin and begging for forgiveness. Joshua embraced him like the father in the parable of the prodigal son. This act of forgiveness shocked many, but it solidified Joshua's reputation as a true man of God. Despite the reconciliation, the enemy's attack didn't stop. Joshua began receiving death threats from unknown individuals. "Stop preaching," the latter warned, "or you will be paid with your life." Joshua refused to be intimidated. "If God is for me, who can be against me?" he declared to his congregation. One evening, while driving home after a revival, armed men ambushed his car. They demanded he renounce his faith or face death. Joshua calmly looked at them and said, "I cannot deny the God who saved me." As they raised their weapons, a bright light engulfed the area, blinding the men temporarily. When they regained their sight, Joshua was gone. He had walked away unarmed, guarded by an unseen hand. News of the incident spread and many called it a divine escape. Despite the miracles and growing fame, Joshua remained humble. "I am just a servant," he often reminded people. One day, during a crusade in Lagos, a young boy who had been born without legs was brought to the altar. Joshua knelt beside the boy, weeping as he prayed. "Father, show your power," he whispered. Before the thousands gathered, the boy's leg began to grow. The crowd erupted in praise, many falling to their knees in awe. This miracle became the talk of the nation, drawing even skeptics to his ministry. But as the ministry expanded, so did the responsibility. Joshua began training younger pastors to carry the vision forward. Among them was Pastor Emmanuel, a zealous young man with a passion for evangelism. Emmanuel became like a son to Joshua, and together they organized the largest revival Nigeria had ever seen. The revival held at a stadium in Abuja attracted over 1 million people. During the event, a sudden storm threatened to disrupt the gathering. People began to scatter in fear. Joshua stood on stage, lifted his hands to the heavens, and prayed. The rain stopped instantly and the sun broke through the cloud. God is here, he proclaimed, and the revival continued with even greater favor. The event led to thousands of conversations and many testified of healing and deliverance. But with greater visibility came greater scrutiny. National media began investigating Joshua, trying to find fault in his ministry. Some accused him of financial misconduct, while others claimed his miracles were staged. Joshua invited auditors to examine the church finances, proving everything was in order. As for the miracles, he said, "I don't perform them. God does. If you doubt, ask him." Meanwhile, international doors began opening. Joshua was invited to preach in Ghana, South Africa, and even the United States. During his first trip abroad, he faced cultural challenges but remained focused on his mission. In South Africa, a woman with stage 4 cancer was healed during a prayer session. Doctors confirmed her recovery, and many skeptics were convinced of God's power. Back home, the ministry faced yet another challenge. A fire broke out the church headquarters. The flames destroyed part of the building, but no lives were lost. Joshua saw the incident as a test. "We will rebuild," he told his congregation, and they did, constructing an even larger and more beautiful sanctuary. As the years went by, Joshua's health began to decline. He spent more time monitoring the next generation of leaders. One day, he called Pastor Emmanuel and others close to him for a private meeting. "I have run my race," he said. "Now it's time for you to carry the mantle." The younger pastor wept, but Joshua reassured them, "God's work never stops, and he will be with you." Joshua spent his final days in prayer and worship, reflecting on God's faithfulness. On a quiet Sunday morning, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. The news of his death shook the nation. People from all walks of life came to pay their respect. The funeral was attended by thousands, including those who had once opposed him. Even in death, Joshua's life continued to inspire. Testimonies poured in from across the world. The young boy, whose legs had grown at the crusade, was now a pastor himself, preaching with the same fire Joshua had. Pastor Emmanuel took over the leadership of the House of Restoration, determined to honor Joshua's legacy. Under Emmanuel's leadership, the church expanded further, planting branches in multiple countries. The ministry also launched schools, hospitals, and orphanages, meeting both spiritual and physical needs. Years later, a biography of Joshua Awolowo was published, titled "The Reluctant Prophet." The book became a bestseller, inspiring countless readers to trust God's calling. Meanwhile, miracles continued to occur at the House of Restoration, proving that God's power was still at work. Joshua's story became a movie, reaching even more people with message of faith and obedience. In every village and city where Joshua had preached, his name was remembered with reverence. But his greatest legacy wasn't the miracles or the fame. It was the countless lives transformed by the love of Christ. One of his favorite sayings became a motto for the church: "Obedience unlocks the impossible." Every year, the church held a Joshua Awolowo Memorial Crusade, drawing millions to Christ. The pastors who once envied him now spoke of him as a mentor and spiritual father. Though gone, Joshua's voice still resonated through his sermons, which were achieved and shared worldwide. In remote villages, people testify of dreams where Joshua appeared, pointing them to Christ. His story inspired a new wave of missionaries, many of whom ventured into unreached areas with the gospel. Decades after his passing, Joshua's influence remained a testament to enduring power of a life surrendered to God. His family, led by his wife Ruth, continued to honor his memory, serving in the ministry with unwavering dedication. Joshua Awolowo's journey from a reluctant mechanic to a world-changing pastor proved one thing: when God calls, he is quick and his plans never fail. Thanks for watching.